I had everything I could ever want. A perfect wife, a beautiful home, a life that seemed untouched by darkness. We had built a life that anyone would envy. Our home was spacious, filled with laughter and warmth. The walls echoed with memories, birthdays, anniversaries, quiet evenings spent together. My wife, Sarah, was everything I had ever wanted. She was kind, loving, and beautiful. We shared a bond that felt unbreakable, and for years, I believed that we were the exception to all the stories about broken relationships. But over time, things began to shift in ways I couldn't explain. It was subtle at first, small things that didn't quite add up. A change in her tone, a look that lingered a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd start staying late at work more often, and when I asked her about it, her responses were always vague. Just busy, she'd say, brushing it off with a smile. But I knew her better than that. She had never been one to be secretive, yet something about her behavior was shifting, and it wasn't just work-related. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the little things, the texts she wouldn't let me see, the phone calls she'd take in another room, the quiet moments where she seemed so distant, even when I was sitting right next to her. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, that life couldn't be as perfect as it seemed, and my mind was just playing tricks on me. But there was a nagging feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. I tried to push it away. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling that had begun to creep into my chest, telling myself that we were fine, that everything was just as it had always been. But the little signs were still there. A few months passed, and I began to notice that even when she was home, her mind wasn't fully with me. She'd smile, sure, but there was a distance in her eyes, a look I couldn't place. And it wasn't like the woman I had married, the woman who had once been so connected to me, so emotionally available. And then one night, everything changed. I had just come back from a late meeting, tired but ready to unwind, when I noticed Sarah's phone on the kitchen counter. She had left it there while she went upstairs to freshen up. I had no intention of snooping. I didn't want to cross that line, but for some reason, I found myself glancing at it. The screen was lit up, and there was a message notification. The name on the message was unfamiliar, Alex. I told myself to ignore it. It's probably a work contact, I reasoned, nothing to be concerned about. But as I stood there, staring at the screen, something about the way the message was worded caught my attention. It wasn't a typical work message. It was personal, too personal. Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you already. My heart skipped a beat. My hands were clammy as I hesitated, unsure of whether I should look further. The thought of invading her privacy gnawed at me, but the curiosity was too strong. I couldn't shake the thought of what that message might mean. Slowly, I swiped the screen to reveal the rest of the conversation. My eyes scanned the text, every word like a hammer hitting my chest. The message wasn't just casual, it was intimate, full of longing and affection. It wasn't a business partner or a colleague. It was something much more than that. I felt a knot form in my stomach. The message wasn't a mistake. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was intentional. My mind raced as I went through the conversation. More texts followed, text after text, each one more personal than the last. Words of affection, promises of more time together, all signed off with, "Can't wait to be with you." My thoughts felt like they were spinning. The woman I had loved, the woman who had promised me everything, was hiding something from me. She was betraying me in a way I couldn't have imagined. I felt the weight of the moment, the realization sinking in like a stone in my gut. This was the moment everything began to unravel. My perfect life, my perfect marriage, everything was a lie. I quickly put the phone back down, as if the act of touching it had somehow violated the trust we had. I tried to steady my breathing, but it felt impossible. The world around me suddenly felt smaller, like it was closing in. I couldn't process it. I didn't want to believe it. But the proof was right there, in front of me. There was no denying it. My wife had been having an affair. And it was with someone I didn't even know, someone who had been in our life, someone who I had trusted. The betrayal wasn't just an affair. It was a deception of the highest degree. The person I thought I knew, the woman I had shared my life with, had been hiding something from me. For a long time, I stood there, motionless. The room felt distant, almost unreal. I wanted to confront her, to ask her about the messages, to demand answers. But what was I supposed to say? What could I say to her when the truth was already laid out so plainly? I decided to wait until she came downstairs. I had to see her face, to see if she would lie to me, to look me in the eyes and tell me everything was fine. I wanted to be sure, no matter how much it hurt. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. The weight felt endless. My heart was pounding in my chest as I braced myself for what was coming. The truth was out there, and I was about to confront it head-on. But deep down, a part of me was still hoping I had misunderstood, hoping that there was some explanation that would make sense of all of this. But in that moment, as I heard her footsteps approaching the stairs, I knew, this was just the beginning. A text on her phone, a name I didn't recognize, a message that was too intimate, too personal. It was the beginning of everything unraveling. The phone was sitting there on the kitchen counter, its screen illuminated by a soft glow. It had been left unattended for just a moment, long enough for my curiosity to creep in. I should have turned away, should have respected her privacy, but something inside me urged me to take a closer look. The nagging doubt in my gut couldn't be ignored. I picked it up, my fingers trembling slightly, though I wasn't sure why. I told myself it was probably nothing, that I was just being paranoid, but the pull to uncover the truth was stronger than my reason. I unlocked the phone, an easy task, given that she rarely changed the passcode, and started scrolling through her messages. What I found wasn't what I expected. At first, it seemed innocent enough. Just a casual conversation with a friend, some banter about work, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, a name caught my eye. Alex. I didn't recognize the name. I had never heard her mention him before, yet here he was, texting her constantly, sending long, affectionate messages. At first, I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was just a colleague, or someone she had known a long time. But as I scrolled further, my stomach dropped. The messages were unmistakable, too intimate, too personal for anyone but someone involved in a romantic relationship. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one of the texts read. "I miss you already, you make me feel alive." The words cut through me like a knife. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. This wasn't just harmless conversation. It was something deeper, something more dangerous. I couldn't stop scrolling. The more I read, the more the pieces fell into place. "We need to be careful," another message said. "Your husband is getting suspicious." My heart pounded in my chest. There it was, the proof. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my entire life, was hiding something from me, something that had been going on for who knows how long. The thought sent waves of nausea through my body. I felt like I was suffocating. The weight of the truth, the weight of the lies, it was too much to bear. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know how. What would I say? How could I even begin to process what I had just discovered? And yet, as I stared at her phone, it was clear that this wasn't just a mistake. This was intentional. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a secret affair, carefully hidden behind a veil of lies. I carefully set the phone down on the counter, my hands still trembling. The message thread felt like it was burned into my mind. Alex. The man she had been sneaking around with, the man who had been a part of our lives without me ever knowing. The realization hit me like a freight train. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, had been living a double life. But I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let her lie to me again. She came downstairs a few minutes later, as though nothing had happened, as though nothing had changed. She smiled when she saw me, the same smile I had seen 1,000 times before. It was the smile of the woman I thought I could trust. The woman who had just shattered that trust in the worst way possible. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, her voice light, like she had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath, the words caught in my throat. I could feel the anger, the betrayal, bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. She looked at me, her smile faltering for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly, as though trying to gauge my mood. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. The words felt heavy, like they were lodged in my throat. But I couldn't just let this go. I had seen the truth, and it was time for her to face it. "I saw the texts," I finally said, my voice shaking with the weight of the words. "I saw everything, Sarah. The messages with Alex. The lies. How long has this been going on?" She froze, her expression changing from casual to something more guarded. "What are you talking about?" she asked, a slight edge to her voice. "You've got it all wrong." My anger flared at her response. "Don't lie to me," I shouted, my hands clenched into fists. "I've seen the texts. I know everything. I know about Alex. I know what you've been doing behind my back." Her face turned pale, and for the first time, I saw her stumble. She took a step back, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice shaking. "You've misunderstood. It's not what you think." But I wasn't buying it. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "It's exactly what I think. You've been having an affair with him for months. All this time, I've been living a lie, and you've been hiding it from me." She opened her mouth to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath before meeting my gaze. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It it just happened." The words hit me like a slap to the face. "You didn't mean for it to happen," I repeated, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You didn't mean to betray me, you didn't mean to lie to me for months." She looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know. It was a mistake." I felt the rage building up inside me, but it was no longer the only emotion I felt. There was something else, something deeper. It was the overwhelming sense of betrayal, of being blindsided by the person I had loved and trusted the most. She had taken everything I had given her, my trust, my heart, and she had shattered it without a second thought. Her dismissal of everything I had uncovered, her attempts to downplay the affair, only fueled my suspicion. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a deliberate act, and I wasn't going to let her lie to me any longer. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with the force of the words. "You've lied to me for the last time. I'm done being manipulated." Her dismissive tone only fueled my suspicion. I wasn't going to let her lie to me. It was time to dig deeper. In the days that followed the confrontation, the weight of the betrayal settled like a storm cloud above me. My wife's tearful apologies and weak excuses echoed in my mind, but they felt hollow, insincere. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much she had lied to me, how deep the deception went. She wasn't just hiding an affair, she was hiding a life that I had no part in, a secret world I had been deliberately kept out of. I began to notice the small things that didn't add up. Her nervous glances when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she would quickly look away when I asked a simple question, the way she would turn the conversation away from certain topics with unnatural ease. Every time I tried to dig deeper, she would deflect, laugh it off, and tell me I was overthinking things. But her evasiveness only fueled my suspicion. I had always trusted her, trusted that we shared everything. So why, then, did I feel like she was keeping something, someone, hidden from me? Her actions weren't matching her words. She was more distant than ever before, like a stranger living in the house we once shared. It wasn't enough to confront her with what I knew. I needed more. I needed the truth. And so, I made the decision to do something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. It wasn't easy. I had never imagined that I would find myself in a situation where I had to resort to such measures. But I needed the facts. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of suspicion. I had to know the full extent of what had been happening behind my back. The investigator was discreet, professional. He didn't ask questions. He just did his job. His task was simple: follow my wife and gather whatever evidence he could. It felt like a betrayal of my own trust, but I was beyond caring about that. The trust one had once given her had already been destroyed. For the next few days, I waited anxiously, checking my phone every few minutes for updates. The investigator was careful, covering every angle, following her to work, watching her movements, and keeping tabs on her activities when she thought no one was watching. I couldn't bear the thought of what I might find, but I knew it was necessary. The first report came in a few days later. The investigator had followed her to a coffee shop in the city, where she had met with a man I didn't recognize. They'd sat together, talking for over an hour. From the way she laughed at his jokes, the way they leaned in toward each other, it was clear that their connection went beyond casual conversation. They were intimate. There was no mistaking the closeness between them. The investigator had snapped photos, and the evidence was right in front of me. I could no longer deny it. The affair wasn't just a fleeting mistake, it had been going on for months. This wasn't something that happened overnight, it was part of a larger plan, a secret life that she had built while I was oblivious. I kept reading the report, my mind reeling. The investigator had followed them to a hotel the next day. They had checked in together, staying for hours. I felt sick to my stomach. I had been right all along. There was no coincidence. There was no misunderstanding. She had been seeing him behind my back, and she had kept it hidden for so long. But it wasn't just an affair. No, this was something darker, something more sinister. As I read further, the investigator's notes began to tell a much more disturbing story. It wasn't just about secret meetings, hidden texts, and stolen moments. It was about manipulation, deceit, and planning. The more I learned, the more I realized how far my wife had gone to cover up the truth. She hadn't just been hiding her affair, she had been working with Alex, this man who had become so deeply entwined in her life for a much larger purpose. The affair had been the distraction, the smoke and mirrors to keep me in the dark. It wasn't about love. It was about control, about getting what she wanted while I was none the wiser. The investigator had also uncovered something else, something that sent a cold chill down my spine. My wife and Alex had been planning something for months. They were preparing to manipulate me into giving them everything. It was part of a larger scheme, one that involved not just the affair, but also my finances, our property, and the life we had built together. They had been carefully orchestrating this entire thing, with Alex feeding her the lies she needed to pull it off. They had been working together from the beginning, using me as a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. She had been plotting behind my back, knowing that sooner or later, I would find out. And when I did, they had already set everything in motion. The evidence was undeniable. My wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was part of a calculated, deliberate plan to destroy everything I had. And all this time, I had thought we were partners, that we shared everything. But she had been living a double life, a life that she kept hidden from me while pretending to be the devoted wife. I sat in my living room, the report in front of me, my hands trembling as I processed what I had just read. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, disbelief, betrayal. I had been married to a woman who had betrayed me in the most cruel and calculated way. She had been playing me for a fool, manipulating me for her own gain. But the worst part was that I had been blind to it all. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And now, everything I thought I knew about our life together had been shattered. The woman I had married, the woman I had built my life with, was someone I didn't recognize anymore. I couldn't just walk away from this, not without getting answers. The investigator's report was the beginning of the end. It had opened my eyes to the truth, to the lies that ran deeper than I could have ever known. And now, there was no going back. I had to confront her. But this time, it wouldn't be just about the affair. It would be about everything. The manipulation, the lies, the deceit. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not again. The investigator's report was the beginning of the end. It was worse than I had imagined. The lies went deeper than I could have ever known. The text messages were bad enough. The hotel visits, the lies, it all felt like an unbearable weight that threatened to crush me. But it wasn't just the affair itself that broke me. No, the worst part was the realization that the woman she had been seeing, the person who had been at the center of her betrayal, wasn't some stranger. It wasn't some random man she had met at work or through social circles. No, the woman she had been sneaking around with was someone I knew well, someone I trusted, someone I had welcomed into our home, shared meals with, laughed with. It was Sarah's best friend, Rachel. The thought hit me like a freight train. Rachel, the woman I had always thought of as a friend, the woman who had celebrated holidays with us, who had been there for countless moments, both good and bad. She wasn't just my wife's confidant, she had been an accomplice. This wasn't just an affair. This was betrayal at its most personal level. The two people I had trusted most in the world had been lying to me, plotting behind my back, and I had been too blind to see it. The gravity of it crushed me, more than anything else. How could she do this to me? How could Rachel, my friend, my wife's friend, be involved in something so underhanded? The very woman who had been part of our lives, who had laughed with us, supported us, and been welcomed into our home was now the one tearing apart everything I had worked so hard to build. And Sarah, she had been so careful, so precise, in keeping it hidden from me. But it wasn't just Rachel's betrayal. It was Sarah's. She had lied to me. She had been pretending the whole time, pretending to be the loving, loyal wife while secretly plotting with Rachel. I couldn't stand it. The thought of it made my stomach churn. I had to confront her. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I needed answers. I needed to know the truth from her own mouth, even if it meant facing the woman I had loved for so many years. I waited until she came home that evening. My mind was a whirlwind, every possible scenario running through my head. I had no idea how she would react. Would she deny it? Would she try to spin another lie? Would she feel guilty at all, or would she continue to manipulate me? But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not anymore. When Sarah walked through the door, she seemed as calm as ever, almost too calm. She kissed me on the cheek, just like any other day. But I could tell something was off. The tension between us was palpable. My heart raced in my chest as I turned to face her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "Now." She froze for a moment, a flicker of panic crossing her face before it was masked by that familiar mask of composure. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice light, but her eyes darting away from mine. I didn't waste any time. "I know about you and Rachel," I said flatly, the words hitting the air with a weight that felt suffocating. Her eyes widened, but she quickly recovered, a forced smile forming on her lips. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. "You've misunderstood. This is all just a mistake." I stared at her, my chest tightening with every word she said. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice sharp. "I know everything. The texts, the meetings, the lies. I saw it all. I saw you and Rachel together. I saw the hotel visits. I know what's been going on behind my back." Her expression faltered for a split second before she regained control. But I could see it in her eyes, the guilt. It was there, buried beneath the layers of defense, but it was undeniable. She was hiding something. She was guilty, and she knew it. "I don't know what you think you saw," she began, but her words were shaking. But you're wrong. There's nothing going on. It's not what you think. I shook my head, the weight of it all becoming too much. Don't give me that. I've seen the proof. It's right in front of me. You and Rachel have been having an affair for months. You've been lying to me, manipulating me, and I've been too blind to see it. You've been planning this behind my back, and I had no idea. Her face twisted with emotion. I could see the panic in her eyes now. It wasn't like that, she said, her voice breaking. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant for any of this to happen. I took a step closer, not breaking my gaze. But it did, Sarah. It happened. And you did it with Rachel, the woman I trusted, the woman who was supposed to be my friend. I welcomed her into our home, into our lives, and this is what she's been doing behind my back. The tears started to form in her eyes, but they didn't make her look any more innocent. If anything, they only made the situation worse. They were the tears of someone who had been caught, but not someone who was truly sorry. I had seen enough manipulation to recognize it when I saw it. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. But I was lonely. I was confused. And Rachel, she was there for me. She listened to me. I thought I could make it work, that I could keep this all hidden. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the heat of anger rising inside me. You thought you could keep it hidden. For how long, Sarah? Months? Years? You've been living a double life, and you think you can apologize your way out of this? She stepped back, her shoulders sagging as if she were trying to shrink into herself. I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make it stop. It just got out of hand. But I wasn't listening to her apologies anymore. I was listening to the truth in her voice. She had betrayed me, and she was trying to spin it into something less painful for herself. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had been caught. I stood tall, every ounce of control I had gathered over the past few days flooding back into me. I'm done, I said, my voice steady. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the manipulation. You've torn everything apart, and I can't forgive you for that. Her face twisted with pain. Please, she pleaded. Don't leave me. Don't do this. I love you. I need you. But I was done listening to her. You don't love me, I said coldly. You love the life I gave you, and you've destroyed it for your own selfish reasons. She fell silent, her eyes pleading with me, but I couldn't be swayed. I was done. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I'm leaving, I said, my voice quiet but firm. This is over. Don't try to convince me otherwise. And with that, I walked out of the room, the weight of my decision settling in. I was done being manipulated. It was time to face her. And this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was done being manipulated. It was time to face her. And this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The air in the house was suffocating after the confrontation with Sarah. I had told myself I would stay calm, that I would approach the situation with a clear head. But as the words left my mouth, as I saw the pain and guilt in her eyes, I realized something. This wasn't just a mistake she had made. It wasn't just an affair. It was a deliberate, calculated betrayal, one that involved more than just her. It involved Rachel, her best friend, the woman I had once called my friend as well, the woman who had been welcomed into our home, shared our meals, our laughter. She had become a part of my life in ways I never imagined she would turn against me. But the truth was undeniable now. Rachel hadn't just been a bystander. She was just as guilty, and the thought of it filled me with rage I couldn't suppress. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't allow her to hide behind Sarah's tears, behind their lies. I had to face her, and I had to hear the truth, even if it broke me further. But when I called Rachel to confront her, I was met with hesitation. For a moment, I wondered if she would try to weasel her way out of it, deny everything, claim it was all Sarah's fault. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I invited Rachel to come to the house, knowing full well that it would be a difficult conversation. I couldn't keep avoiding it, couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I needed to hear her side of the story. I needed to know what kind of person she had become, what kind of monster could betray me so easily. When she arrived, her expression was guarded. She was usually so open, so warm, but today she was different. There was an unease in her posture, a nervous energy that buzzed between us. She stepped into the living room, but there was no warm greeting, no friendly smile. She knew why she was here. Rachel, I said, my voice steady but filled with tension. We need to talk. She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I don't know what you think you know, but it's not what you think, she said quickly, the words coming out in a rush, as if she were trying to get ahead of what was to come. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Cut the act, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I know about everything. The affair with Sarah. The lies. You two have been plotting behind my back for God knows how long. Her face flickered with guilt, but she quickly masked it, trying to appear calm. collected. I didn't want it to go this far, she said, her voice faltering. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know. It just happened. The coldness in my chest grew tighter. I had heard enough of these excuses. I wasn't interested in hearing how it just happened. No, this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was planned. From the very beginning, Rachel had been complicit in betraying me. Don't lie to me, I said, my hands clenched tightly by my sides. I've seen the messages. I've seen everything. You both manipulated me into believing you were my friends. You've been sneaking around, betraying me, and all along, I've been blind to it. Do you really think I'm just going to let you both get away with it? She looked at me, her eyes wide, as if surprised by the force of my words. I could see the guilt written all over her face now, but it didn't change the fact that she had lied to me, that she had been a part of tearing my world apart. I never meant for it to go this far, she said again, her voice shaking. I never thought it would hurt you like this. I don't know. It just happened, and I didn't know how to stop it. The words cut through me like a blade. You didn't know how to stop it. You didn't know how to stop it when you were sending him texts, when you were meeting him in secret, when you were lying to me every damn day. You didn't know how to stop it then. Her silence was deafening. I could feel the walls closing in, the reality of the situation setting in. Rachel had been the one to help destroy everything. She wasn't just some innocent bystander caught in a whirlwind. No, she had played a part in this from the very beginning, and now, she was trying to act like she was a victim in it all. I was there for you, I continued, my voice barely a whisper, thick with the hurt I felt. I trusted you. I opened up my home to you. And this is what you've done. You've turned my life into a lie. She reached for me, but I pulled away, not allowing her to touch me. There was no sympathy left in me for her. She didn't deserve my understanding. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear, Rachel said, but I could see the cracks in her facade. The guilt was too heavy for her to carry, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate me into thinking she was somehow a victim in this. You don't get to play the victim, I said coldly. You don't get to walk away from this as if you haven't done anything wrong. You've ruined my life, Rachel. You've ruined everything. And now you want to apologize. You want me to forgive you for this? Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't care. I didn't want this to happen, she said, her voice breaking. But it did. I can't take it back. But I am sorry. I'm so sorry. Her apology meant nothing. Nothing could undo the damage she had done, and nothing could erase the betrayal I had felt from the moment I first discovered the truth. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything settle on me. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal of trust. I had given her my friendship, my trust, my life, and she had thrown it all away without a second thought. The silence between my wife and me had grown thicker, but I was done. She no longer had control of the narrative. The truth had come out, and I wasn't going to let her lie to me any longer. I'm done, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I'm done being manipulated. Done pretending like everything is fine. I'm taking back control. I'm not going to let you both ruin my life anymore. Rachel opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, silencing her. No more lies. No more excuses. It's over. I walked away from her then, knowing that this was the final moment where I had allowed myself to be a victim. From this moment on, I was done being manipulated. It was time to take action, and I wasn't going to back down. I was done being the victim. It was time to take action, and I wasn't going to back down. Filing for divorce wasn't just a legal process. It felt like I was cutting ties with the life I thought I knew. The decision to hire a lawyer, to officially take that first step toward ending everything, was both liberating and terrifying. In a way, it felt like I was reclaiming my life, taking back control of my own narrative. But in another sense, it felt like stepping into a battle that I wasn't entirely sure I was ready for. I had been through so much already, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, but the road ahead was about to become even more difficult. Jason wasn't going to make this easy. I knew that. I had spent enough time with him to understand how much he valued his reputation, his ego. He wasn't going to let go quietly. The reality of the divorce, the fact that it was now public, would have shattered the carefully constructed facade he had built for years. The perfect husband, the loyal partner. He would fight for his pride, his status, and everything that he had spent his life building. But I had something he didn't. I had the truth on my side. The moment I hired a lawyer, the walls around me seemed to close in. The paperwork, the legal jargon, the phone calls, all of it was overwhelming. It wasn't just a process, it was a constant reminder of what had been lost, what had been destroyed. But I wasn't about to back down. Every phone call, every text, every moment Jason thought I didn't notice, it was all now evidence. It was all coming to light in the cold, unforgiving courtroom. It didn't take long for Jason to react. His lawyer was one of the best in the city, polished, sharp, and calculating. The first few meetings felt like a whirlwind. The back and forth, the negotiations, the accusations. It was a game of power, and I could see that Jason was playing it to win. He tried to make himself out to be the victim, the man who had been wrong. His lawyer suggested that I was the one at fault, that I was emotionally unstable, that I was overreacting. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. No, this was about me taking back my life, and Jason wasn't about to let me do that without a fight. He accused me of being vindictive, of trying to ruin him. He made it clear in every conversation that he would not let me take everything from him. He wanted the house. He wanted the assets. He wanted to make sure I walked away with nothing. The more he fought, the more I realized how much he had taken from me, how much of my life, my happiness, had been sacrificed for his own ego and selfish desires. But the more he fought, the more determined I became. This wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about my future, about reclaiming the life he had stolen from me. The first day in court was a blur. Jason sat across from me, his lawyer by his side, his expression cold and unreadable. I had always thought he was so composed, so confident, but now that I saw him across the courtroom from me, I realized it was all an act. His composure was a shield, a way to hide the cracks beneath the surface. But I had seen the cracks. I had seen the man he really was, the man who had betrayed me, the man who had tried to manipulate me into believing I was the one at fault. The lawyer's tactics were predictable. He tried to paint me as the one who was unreasonable, the one who had overreacted to the affair. He suggested that I was simply trying to punish Jason for something that had been a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. It was infuriating, the way he twisted the truth, the way he tried to make me out to be the villain. But I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. Every time they tried to discredit me, to belittle my emotions, to make it sound like I was the crazy one, I reminded myself why I was here. I wasn't here to punish Jason. I was here to reclaim what had been taken from me. My dignity, my self-respect, my life. The more they fought, the more I knew this was the only way forward. This was the only way I could take back what was mine. Jason's lawyer made it clear that he wasn't just fighting for a divorce. He was fighting for control. He didn't want me to have anything. He didn't want me to walk away with the house we had built together, the life we had shared. But that was no longer his decision to make. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me into giving him everything he wanted. The courtroom was a battlefield, and every argument, every accusation, felt like a war of words. The judge, a quiet, methodical man, listened to both sides carefully, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes as Jason's lawyer tried to twist the facts. The affair wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It had been a calculated decision, a deliberate act that had been going on for months. And Jason wasn't just a man who had made a mistake. He was a man who had been willing to tear apart everything we had built, all for his own selfish desires. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up in front of the judge, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel Jason's eyes on me, but I didn't look at him. I couldn't look at the man who had betrayed me, the man who had lied to me for so long. This was my moment to tell the truth. I spoke slowly, carefully, but with conviction. I told the court about the affair. I told them about the lies, the secrets, the manipulation. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't hold back. I wasn't just asking for a divorce. I was fighting for my future, for the life I deserve. The judge listened, his expression unreadable. But when I finished, I could see a flicker of something in his eyes, a recognition of the truth. Jason's lawyer tried to tear apart my testimony, to make it seem like I was exaggerating, but it didn't work. The truth had a way of standing firm, even when it was being attacked from every angle. The first day in court ended with both sides retreating, the tension still thick in the air. I walked out of the courtroom with my lawyer, my mind spinning. The battle was far from over, but I had taken the first step. The truth had been laid bare, and I wasn't backing down. The stakes were higher than I anticipated. He wasn't just fighting for his reputation, he was fighting for everything. But I wouldn't back down. The days leading up to the trial were a blur of preparation, meetings with my lawyer, and sleepless nights spent rehearsing what I was going to say. Every conversation, every exchange with Jason, had led us to this point. The courtroom was about to become the battleground where I would fight for my dignity, my future, and my peace of mind. But as the trial loomed closer, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a storm, one where nothing would be as I expected. The first day in court had already been a reminder of how low Jason was willing to go. His lawyer was a seasoned manipulator, someone who knew exactly how to twist the narrative in his favor. I had seen it before, his sharp words, his deliberate use of emotional triggers. He would paint me as the unreasonable one, the emotional wreck, the woman unable to deal with the truth. It was infuriating, but I had to let him speak. I had to let him show his true colors. As the trial began, I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap. Jason was sitting across the room from me, his eyes avoiding mine, his face tense. He knew this was coming, he knew the truth would come out, but he was desperate. Desperate to protect his reputation. Desperate to keep his life intact. Desperate to make me look like the one who was wrong. His lawyer wasted no time launching into his defense. The strategy was clear from the beginning: distract, deflect, and confuse. He tried to undermine every word I said, to twist the narrative and make it seem like I was overreacting, that I had imagined the affair, that I was seeking revenge for some imagined slight. The more he spoke, the more I saw through his facade. The cracks in his defense were evident. He is doing this because he feels betrayed, Jason's lawyer argued. He is projecting his own guilt onto my client, the defendant. He cannot accept that his wife may have made an error in judgment. This is a man consumed by rage, not reason. The words stung, but they didn't break me. I had heard it all before. Jason's lawyer wasn't interested in the truth. He wasn't interested in justice. He was interested in saving his client, protecting the man who had torn apart our marriage. He was willing to do whatever it took to keep Jason's world intact, even if it meant lying in front of the court. But as I sat there, I realized something. The more they tried to paint me as the villain, the more their lies became apparent. I could see it in the way Jason's lawyer avoided addressing the real issues: the affair, the manipulation, the deceit. Instead, he tried to shift the focus to my emotions, to my supposed irrationality. It was the oldest trick in the book, and I wasn't buying it. The first few days of the trial felt like a game that Jason and his lawyer were playing, trying to manipulate the truth. But every lie, every deflection, only made the truth stand out more. The truth couldn't be hidden forever. The lies couldn't shield him from the reality of what he had done. The turning point came on the third day. I was called to the stand. My heart was pounding in my chest as I made my way to the witness box, but I forced myself to take each step with purpose. This was my moment to reclaim my story. I had lived through the pain, the betrayal, and now it was time for the world to hear the truth. No more silence. No more pretending. The room fell quiet as I took my seat, the eyes of the judge, the jury, and Jason all on me. My lawyer stood beside me, a steadying presence, but it was up to me now. I had to speak. I had to tell my side of the story, no matter how painful it was. "Tell us, Mrs. Walker," the lawyer began, his voice calm but firm. "What happened? What led to the breakdown of your marriage?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I looked at Jason, sitting across the room, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of clarity. He had no power over me anymore. He had taken everything from me, but now it was time for me to take it back. I began slowly, speaking with a calmness that surprised even me. "I married a man I thought I could trust. I loved him, with everything I had. We built a life together. But somewhere along the way, things changed, and I didn't see it at first. I didn't want to see it. But there were things that didn't add up, small things at first. Her texts, her sudden distance, her reluctance to share her day with me." I glanced at the jury, making sure they understood the weight of my words. But the moment I found the truth, when I saw the messages, when I realized what had been going on behind my back, everything changed. It wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. I was deceived. I was manipulated. And the person I thought I knew, the person I had trusted with my life, wasn't the man I thought he was. Jason's lawyer immediately jumped up, interrupting me, trying to discredit my testimony. "Objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff is merely speaking from an emotional perspective. He's making accusations based on feelings, not facts." The judge's gavel struck, silencing the room. "Sustain. Mrs. Walker, please stick to the facts." I nodded, but inside, I felt a surge of anger. I wasn't going to let him control this. I wasn't going to let him make me feel small, like my emotions didn't matter. This was my story, and I was going to tell it, no matter how uncomfortable it made him. "I was betrayed," I continued, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling up inside me. "But it wasn't just the affair. It was everything. The lies, the manipulation, the way he acted like nothing was wrong, even as I uncovered the truth. He wasn't just a man who made a mistake. He was a man who consciously chose to deceive me, who chose to destroy our marriage for his own selfish reasons." The room was silent. I could see the effect my words were having on the jury. They were listening. They were hearing the truth. The truth that Jason had tried so hard to bury under a pile of lies. But Jason wasn't going to go down without a fight. He tried to shift the focus back to me, to paint me as the unstable one. "She's just angry," he said, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "She's making accusations because she's hurt. She can't handle the truth." But every time he opened his mouth, I could see the cracks in his facade. His anger wasn't a shield. It was the desperation of a man who knew the truth was slipping away from him. I was done being manipulated. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the one who had been wronged. And now, with every word I spoke, I was making sure the world knew it. This was it, the final battle. The stakes couldn't be higher. But would I win? The trial had been long, and at moments, it felt like we were inching closer to an inevitable end. Jason's lies were unraveling, piece by piece, as my lawyer tore apart his defense, exposing the betrayal for what it was. It wasn't just the affair, it was the manipulation, the deceit, the callous disregard for everything we had built. I could feel it in the air. Victory was near, the truth was coming to light, and the man who had destroyed my world was finally being exposed for who he truly was. But just as I thought the case was almost over, the ground beneath me shifted. It was late in the proceedings, the courtroom buzzing with anticipation, when the next witness was called to the stand. Mark, Jason's best friend, was about to testify. I hadn't expected him to be called at all. In my mind, he was just another person who had been swept into the chaos Jason had caused, someone who was on the periphery of it all. But now, as I watched Mark walk to the witness box, I felt a twinge of something darker. I didn't know why, but I could sense something was about to happen. Mark had always been friendly to me. He was the kind of guy who laughed too loudly at jokes and made a habit of showing up at every family gathering, always eager to be part of the group. But I had never seen him the way I was seeing him now. His face was drawn, his movements stiff. There was something different about him, something I couldn't quite place. As he took the oath and sat down, I felt the tension in the room rise. Mark, my lawyer began, his voice steady. Can you tell us what you know about the relationship between Jason and Rachel? Mark hesitated. His eyes darted to Jason, who was sitting across the room, his expression impassive. Mark shifted in his seat, his hands nervously clutching the edges of the witness stand. I could see his discomfort, but I also saw something else, something that made my stomach churn. Guilt. Mark started, his voice wavering. Well, I don't know how much I should be saying, but, he stopped, clearing his throat. I've known Jason for a long time. We've been through a lot together, and, I guess I can't pretend I don't know what's been happening. I leaned forward in my seat, my heart pounding. What was he going to say? My lawyer didn't waste any time. Can you tell us about the affair between Jason and Rachel? How long has it been going on? Mark swallowed hard, his eyes darting to Jason again. It's been going on for months. But it wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a fling. It was part of something much bigger. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I could feel the shock ripple through the courtroom. Everyone was listening intently, and Jason was no longer sitting with the same smug confidence he had before. I could see the cracks in his armor. His eyes were locked on Mark now, and there was a flicker of fear in them that I hadn't noticed before. Mark continued, his voice growing more strained. Jason and Rachel, they weren't just sleeping together. They were working together. They planned it all. They weren't just lovers. They were conspirators. The room fell silent. I could hardly breathe. Conspirators? What did he mean by that? My mind raced as I tried to process what Mark was saying. My God, my lawyer said, almost under his breath. Are you saying this was premeditated? Mark nodded slowly, his hands trembling. Yes, they planned it from the start. Rachel, she was the one who suggested it. She wanted to be with Jason, but she didn't want to hurt you. So, they decided to make it look like it was just an affair, something that could be easily covered up. But the truth is, it wasn't just about the affair. It was about taking everything from you. The words landed with a sickening thud. I felt the floor fall out from under me. Jason and Rachel weren't just caught in a moment of weakness. They had planned this. They had conspired against me, and I had been too blinded by my trust to see it. Jason had been lying to me for months, no, for years, and I had been too naive to notice. I had trusted Rachel, had welcomed her into our home, into our lives, and she had used that trust against me. And Jason had been in on it from the start, playing the part of the loving husband while secretly tearing me apart. Mark's voice cracked as he continued. They were planning to take everything, your money, your house, everything you'd built. Jason was going to make it look like it was your fault, that you were the one who had destroyed the marriage. He wanted to be free, to start over with Rachel, and they both figured the only way to do that was to make you look like the crazy one, the one who couldn't handle the truth. They had it all worked out, from the very beginning. The room felt like it was spinning. I could hardly breathe. I had been so focused on the affair, on the betrayal of my trust, that I hadn't seen the bigger picture. Jason and Rachel weren't just two people who had crossed a line. They had been plotting my downfall. This wasn't just an affair. This was a carefully orchestrated plan to destroy me, to take everything I had worked for, and to leave me with nothing. My eyes darted to Jason. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of anger and fear. For the first time in this entire trial, he wasn't looking at me with the smugness I had come to expect. No, he was looking at Mark, as though he had just realized the depth of the damage that was being done. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out at him, to tear into him for everything he had done. But I couldn't. I had to stay calm. I had to focus on the truth. The truth was the only thing that mattered now. Mark looked down at the floor, ashamed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted to get involved, but I couldn't stand by and watch this happen anymore. Jason had been lying to everyone, especially you. And Rachel, too. She wasn't the innocent victim she pretended to be. She knew exactly what she was doing." Jason's lawyer stood up, trying to intervene. "Objection, Your Honor," he shouted, his voice shaky with frustration. "This is speculation. The witness is not qualified to speak to the defendant's intentions." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sustain, Mr. Walker. Please stick to the facts." But Mark had already said enough. The damage was done. Jason's carefully constructed story was crumbling, and the truth was finally out. They had worked together. They had conspired to destroy me. I could see the realization in Jason's eyes now. His betrayal had been exposed, and there was no way to hide from it anymore. The lies he had told, the web of deception he had spun, was now unraveling before him. The weight of Mark's revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut. This was worse than I could have ever imagined. Jason wasn't just a man who had made a mistake. He was a man who had planned everything. Every betrayal, every lie, every moment of pain I had endured. And Rachel, she wasn't just an affair partner. She had been a co-conspirator in this nightmare. I could feel my blood boiling, but I held it together. I had no choice now but to let the truth continue to surface. I had to stand firm. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a fight for my life. The weight of this revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. What had I married into? The final day of the trial had arrived, and the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every lawyer, every witness, every person in that room seemed to understand the weight of the moment. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the final battle, the culmination of everything I had fought for. Jason had tried to manipulate the situation from the start, using his charm, his wealth, his connections to twist the narrative in his favor. But today, it was my turn to make sure the truth was heard. No more lies. No more manipulation. This time, I wasn't going to let him win. Jason, the man who had once been the center of my world, was sitting across from me in the courtroom, his cold eyes locked on me. He had spent days denying everything, deflecting responsibility, playing the victim, and making me look like the unreasonable one. But it was clear now that his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. There was no more pretending. He couldn't hide from what he had done. The courtroom was full, family, friends, strangers. But it didn't matter to me anymore. I didn't care about their opinions. I only cared about one thing, making sure I walked away with my dignity intact. No matter what happened after this, I knew that I would be able to hold my head high, knowing I had fought for what was right. Jason's lawyer, the same one who had been so aggressive in defending him, started with his usual tactics. He tried to make me look irrational, to question my motives, to make me doubt myself. But this time, I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me. I had been through too much already. The lies, the betrayal, the pain, it was all behind me now. And with every word that Jason's lawyer spoke, I could feel the anger and resolve building up inside me. "You've heard the plaintiff's side of the story," Jason's lawyer began, standing tall in front of the jury. "But what we have here is a woman who is letting her emotions cloud her judgment. She's lashing out because she's hurt. She's trying to destroy Jason's life to make herself feel better." The words were like poison, but I didn't let them affect me. I'd heard them before. I had no time to waste on his theatrics. This was my moment. I knew what I had to do. "I object," I said, my voice cutting through the air. The courtroom fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. For the first time, it felt like I had control. "This isn't about emotion," I said, my voice steady, but with an edge of steel that surprised even me. "This is about truth. And the truth is, Jason destroyed my life, manipulated me, and betrayed my trust. He lied, and I'm here to make sure the world knows who he really is." The silence in the room was deafening. Jason's lawyer opened his mouth to object, but I cut him off before he could speak. "Jason," I said, turning toward him, "you've spent the last several weeks trying to make me the villain. You've tried to paint me as crazy, as unreasonable. You've tried to twist the truth, and I'm not the one who's been betraying someone who loved me. You're the one who did that, Jason. And now, you want to pretend like you're the victim." Jason's lawyer stepped forward, clearly rattled by my boldness. "Your Honor," he said, this is pure emotion. This isn't evidence. We're here to discuss the facts. The facts, I repeated, my voice growing louder. The facts are that Jason and Rachel plotted behind my back. They didn't just have an affair, they were working together to destroy everything I've worked for. They manipulated me, they lied to me, and they thought they could get away with it. The jury was listening intently, and I could see the impact my words were having. The defense was crumbling before my eyes. Jason was trying to hold it together, but I could tell it was slipping. The truth was finally breaking through, and he knew it. Let me make something clear, I said, locking eyes with Jason. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to reclaim my life. I'm here to take back what you took from me. I'm here to make sure the world knows the truth about you, about what you've done to me, and I'm not leaving until it's all on the table. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes flicking from me to his lawyer, but he remained silent. The damage had been done. He had no more lies to tell. The affair, the manipulation, the conspiracy, it was all exposed. The rest of the trial was a blur. I sat through the remainder of Jason's defense, but it no longer mattered. The lies had been exposed, the truth had been told, and there was no coming back from it. Jason had tried to control the narrative, but it had backfired. His ego had led him down a path of destruction, and now, it was too late to fix it. Finally, the moment arrived, the closing statements. Jason's lawyer tried to salvage what was left of his client's dignity, but it was clear to everyone in the room that the case had already been decided. The truth had won. When it was my turn to make my closing statement, I stood tall. My voice was steady, but there was fire in it. I'm not asking for sympathy, I said. I'm not asking for anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm simply asking for what I deserve. The truth. I've been through hell, but I'm still standing. I'm stronger than I was before. And I will not let this man, this fraud, take another thing from me. The judge nodded, signaling the end of the trial. The jury was dismissed, and I walked out of the courtroom feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. The battle had been fierce, but I had fought with everything I had, and in the end, the truth had come out. This was it, the final battle. The stakes couldn't be higher. But would I win? The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. I could feel the weight of the moment settling over me, the tension in the room thick and suffocating. The trial had lasted for weeks, each day an emotional battle, but now it was finally coming to an end. I had given everything I had in those courtroom walls, my truth, my pain, my fight for justice. Now, it was out of my hands. I could only wait for the judge to speak. Jason sat across from me, his face impassive, his jaw tight with frustration. He had tried to control the narrative, to manipulate the courtroom into believing that he was the wronged party, that I was overreacting, that the affair had been a one-time mistake. But I knew better. The truth had come out, and it was undeniable. I had fought tooth and nail for everything, and now, the moment of reckoning was here. The judge's gavel echoed through the room, cutting through the silence. He looked at us both, his eyes sharp and focused. After carefully considering all the evidence presented, he began, his voice steady, "This court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Walker, on all counts." My heart skipped a beat. I felt a rush of relief flood through me, followed by a strange mix of disbelief and satisfaction. The verdict had been delivered. Jason, the man who had betrayed me, who had tried to tear apart everything we had built, had been exposed for the fraud he was. He had lost, and I had won. The court ruled in my favor on every count, the divorce, the division of assets, and the emotional distress. Jason had tried to fight for everything, the house, the property, the financial security, but the judge had seen through his lies, his manipulation, and his attempts to control the situation. The life we had built together, the life he had tried so hard to destroy, was now mine to rebuild. I had been through hell, but I had come out the other side, stronger and more determined than ever. The room around me felt distant as the judge continued reading the ruling. My mind was consumed by a single thought: I had won. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a personal victory. The man who had destroyed my trust, my heart, my sense of self, he had lost everything, and I had reclaimed what was mine. As the judge concluded the ruling, I glanced at Jason. His face was pale, his eyes cold and distant. For the first time in weeks, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. There was fear there, and maybe, just maybe, a touch of regret. But it didn't matter. His time had passed. This was no longer his story. I stood up, my legs slightly shaking, but I held my head high. My lawyer gave me a supportive nod as I made my way out of the courtroom. The doors swung open, and I stepped into the hallway, the bright lights of the courthouse suddenly blinding after the dimness of the courtroom. For the first time in months, I felt free. The weight that had been pressing down on me, the burden of living a lie, had been lifted. The future was mine to shape now. The future that Jason had tried to take from me, the future that I had almost lost. But I hadn't. I had fought for it, and now it was in my hands. My lawyer walked beside me, his voice low and reassuring. You did it. You fought for what was right. You stood your ground, and you won. This is the start of a new chapter for you. His words echoed in my mind as I walked through the courthouse doors, the cool air hitting my face like a breath of fresh air. I felt like I had been holding my breath for so long, waiting for this moment. But now, it was over. The nightmare was behind me, and I was ready to move forward. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, for my future, for my dignity. The woman who had walked into that courtroom, broken, betrayed, unsure of herself, was no longer the same woman who walked out of it. I had found strength I never knew I had, and I was proud of that. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of the betrayal, the hurt, the confusion, everything that had clouded my vision for so long, was finally starting to fade. What was left was clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. The betrayal had hurt more than I ever could have imagined, but it had also given me the opportunity to rediscover myself, to reclaim my life, to take back everything that was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I didn't need Jason's validation anymore. I didn't need him to define me. I had defined myself. I had fought for my future, and I had won. The next chapter of my life was mine to write, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the kind of peace that only comes from knowing you've done the right thing. The world ahead of me was wide open, and I was ready to embrace it. I glanced back once, just for a moment, at the courthouse doors. For so long, I had felt trapped in a marriage built on lies, trapped in a life that wasn't mine. But not anymore. I had closed that chapter. The next chapter would be mine, and it was going to be something beautiful. As I left the courtroom, I realized something. The betrayal wasn't just about him. It was about me finding strength I never knew I had. The finality of the divorce was a strange thing to process. On one hand, there was a sense of relief, a quiet peace that settled in my chest as I realized it was finally over. The legal battles, the courtroom dramas, the lies, and the manipulation, all of it was in the past. But on the other hand, there was an emptiness that lingered, like a hole that I hadn't quite learned how to fill. The life I had built with Jason was gone. The home we had shared, the future I had imagined for us, all of it was shattered. But, despite the pain and the loss, there was also something else. Something I hadn't expected. The opportunity to rebuild, to start fresh, to take control of my life again. It wasn't easy, not by any means. The first few weeks after the divorce felt like an emotional roller coaster. I moved into a small apartment, nothing special, just a place to get away from the memories of the home I had shared with Jason. It felt like starting over, but starting over is never as simple as it sounds. There were days when I felt lost, when the weight of the betrayal still felt too heavy to carry. But those days were becoming fewer and fewer. I knew I had to rebuild my life, but I didn't know where to start. For so long, I had defined myself by my marriage. I had been part of a unit, a partnership, and now, I was standing on my own. I had to figure out who I was outside of that. I had to find my purpose again, the one I had lost in the years of trying to make my marriage work. The first step was to give myself permission to grieve. I had spent so much time fighting, so much time trying to keep it together for the sake of the trial and the divorce process, that I hadn't taken the time to process the emotional weight of everything I had been through. The betrayal had left a scar, there was no denying that. But scars fade with time. The hurt would never fully disappear, but I could learn to live with it. I could learn to turn it into something else. Once I allowed myself to feel that pain, to sit with it and understand it, I realized that I didn't need to carry the burden of guilt and shame any longer. Jason had done that to me, not me to myself. The life we had shared wasn't something I could change, but it wasn't something I had to mourn forever, either. I wasn't stuck in the past. I was free to create something new. The next step was finding my strength again. For so long, I had let Jason's manipulation shape my actions. I had allowed myself to be defined by his lies, his infidelity, and his selfishness. But now, I was in control. The power was mine to take back. I started setting small goals, things that reminded me of who I was before him. I started writing again, something I had abandoned during the years of our marriage. I took up running, something I had once loved but let slip away. It wasn't about escaping the past, it was about reclaiming the parts of myself that I had buried under the weight of my marriage. I threw myself into work. I focused on building my career again. I had always been passionate about my job, but I had let it fall to the wayside while I had been focused on being the perfect wife. Now, I was rediscovering my professional identity. I felt the thrill of new projects, the excitement of collaborating with colleagues, and the sense of fulfillment that had been missing for so long. I realized that I was capable of more than I had ever given myself credit for. But the most important thing I learned during this time was how to be alone. Not lonely, alone. There's a difference. I learned that I didn't need a partner to define my worth. I didn't need someone else to validate who I was. For the first time in a long time, I was fully in control of my own happiness. I could wake up every day and choose how I wanted to live. I could choose what to pursue, what to spend my time on, and who to surround myself with. I also discovered new passions. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I started attending art classes, meeting new people, and finding inspiration in the world around me. It was liberating to discover that I could still find joy in life, even after everything that had happened. The world hadn't stopped turning, and neither had I. The betrayal, while devastating, had also given me the space to grow. It had forced me to confront parts of myself that I had neglected, parts of myself that had been lost in the shuffle of marriage and the expectations that come with it. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to let go of the life I thought I would have and make room for something new. There were moments when I still felt the sting of the past. The nights when I missed the companionship, the support that had once come so naturally in our relationship. The moments when I wished things had turned out differently, when I wished I could go back in time and change everything. But those moments were fewer now. They didn't consume me anymore. I had made it through the storm. I had faced the truth and come out on the other side, stronger and more resilient. I had found my footing, and now, I was moving forward. The journey wasn't over, but it was only just beginning. There was so much ahead of me, so much I could still accomplish. And I was no longer afraid of what the future might hold. I had taken control of my life again. I had rebuilt myself from the ashes of betrayal, and now, nothing could stand in my way. The betrayal hurt, but it gave me the chance to rebuild my life. It was a new beginning, and this time, I was in control. My journey was one of loss, betrayal, and heartbreak, but also one of empowerment, resilience, and self-discovery. I have been through the depths of pain, questioning everything I thought I knew about trust, love, and the life I had built. But through all of that, I found strength I never knew I had. I found the courage to rise above the lies and manipulation, to reclaim my life, and to rebuild it on my own terms. If you're going through something similar, if you're dealing with betrayal or feeling like you've lost your way, know that you are not alone. The path may seem unclear, the journey may feel endless, but there is always a way forward. You don't have to let anyone control your story. Take back your power, just like I did. The truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how cleverly it's hidden. It's the truth that gives us the power to stand tall, even in the face of betrayal. And remember, no matter what you've been through, you are stronger than you think. There's strength in you that you haven't even discovered yet. It's waiting for you to realize that you can overcome anything, no matter how impossible it may seem. If you found strength in my story, if it's given you hope or reminded you of your own power, I invite you to subscribe and stay tuned for more empowering stories. There's always a new chapter to be written, and the best part is that you are the one who holds the pen. Your journey, your story, is just beginning. And no one, can take that from you. Stay strong, keep moving forward, and know that brighter days are ahead. You are stronger than you think.